Yeah.
And I'm like, you get the leads by building a brand and getting in front of people.
Yeah.
So seriously, stop it. It's not an overnight process. Build your brand.
Hello and welcome to episode 51 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for well, you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, editor of Rockstar CMO, where you can take a hit of marketing street knowledge at rockstarcmo.com and at Rockstar CMO on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you're new to the show, this weekly podcast serves as my excuse to chat with friends, marketers, writers, and CMOs I've met through this publication and my career in marketing as a CMO, VP, consultant, and analyst at various B2B vendors, agencies, and with my own advisory firm. This episode was recorded on Friday the 26th of February. We're still in lockdown here at the Rockstar CMO penthouse, and I hope you've had a good week and you are well, safe, and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. Another packed episode this week. In a moment, I'll be chatting with Jeff Clark as we discuss if a marketing trend or technique is a one-hit wonder or wonderwall. This week's interview is with Christoph Trappe, a rockstar content marketer, author, and speaker. And finally, I again join Robert Rose as we close the week with a cocktail in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Right, let's get started, shall we? On to our first segment. We marketers love to be down with the cool kids dancing to the latest sound, but will that tune stand the test of time? Each week, my chum Jeff Clark, Rockstar CMO advisor and former Serious Decisions Forrester research director, joins me in deciding if that marketing tune, topic or technique or trend that everyone is talking about is a one-hit wonder or wonderwall. Let's find out what's hot or not this week. Welcome, Jeff, back to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing good, thank you, mate. Very busy. Just launched a website for a client, so a very intense time. So that's always good.
Oh yeah,
I shouldn't actually describe him as a client anymore because I actually work there. So that's
we're all clients. We're all slaves to a master.
All right. Anyway, let's get back to what I think is now lovingly referred to as a side gig. Rockstar CMO, and our conversation every week about what is going to be a one-hit wonder or wonderwall. Now we conjured up a little list, didn't we, of the kind of buzzwords that are making it around our wonderful industry, and data-driven popped up, I think, a couple of weeks ago while we were chatting. And it seems appropriate time to be thinking about that because we've done personalization, we've done agile, we've touched on data in many of our conversations. So what say you, sir, about data-driven marketing?
Well, one of the things that bugs me about the term being thrown around too casually is that because I just, to me, it's like one of those things, just like when we're talking about agile, we want to be more agile. We want to be data driven. Well, yes. Okay. So you want to be data driven. Well, that's really nice. But we also have to realize that just so much of what we do in our decision making is not data driven. I mean, it's either intuitive, it's biased, it's, it's like, when we have married the people we married, if it was data driven, do we, think about the food we're going to eat or all these various decisions. And so much of what we do and so much of what happened in marketing is it's people's intuitions, and it's kind of jumping on trends, and let's go account-based marketing, and let's do more digital bubble. And it's not really thinking about the discipline. So this is like some of the other things we've talked about. It's like, okay, you want to be data driven? Let's talk about the discipline of being data driven. And we could go back, for when we all started, any of us started in marketing and say, well, so we were being data driven because, I don't know, we were sending out emails and we were looking at response rates, or we set up a website like you just did, and we're looking at, increased traffic. So I think there's individual roles in marketing that have always been data driven. But if you're trying to get the marketing team to be data driven, then you need to think about, okay, what are the quantitative goals that we're going to set up that drives our thinking and our strategies in marketing? Yeah. What are the ways that we're going to track against those goals? And what's our sort of decision-making cadence to make sure we're correcting to hit goals? And not to say, we're getting too many bounces or too little bounces out of, can't get too little bounces out of email, but not to get into the weeds about the specific tactics, but what are we doing as an organization, or how are we doing to actually, hit those goals? And one of the things that is sort of a kind of another, pet peeve of mine about marketing is when you think about almost all the other functions within certainly a profit-making organization, they are all data-driven. Marketing typically is not. So if I'm in sales, I have to hit quotas. I've got revenue goals. If I'm in product, I got to hit deadlines. I got to make sure that I'm investing resources in products that are profitable, that I'm not losing money. If I'm in finance, I'm looking at, finance is data, is all data, and so in marketing, it's like, well, I think one of the challenges has been, and maybe this we'll get in when we start talking about education and training and marketing, this may get into the topic, but it's like, so what are the ways that which we can create quantifiable goals that we set everybody to manage themselves and their teams against, so that we can understand what data we need? And then you've got the skills that are required and the technology to actually pull the data together. So you've actually got a data resource that can help you answer those questions of tracking against those goals. And then there's the training or the enablement that's required that says, okay, now that we've set this up, the structure up, we need to make sure everybody knows how to, go get the information, whatever, run the tools, reports, interpret it, or work with people who are going to, analysts are going to interpret it for them. And that is, that is a considerable amount of work. And
absolutely,
it takes discipline and leadership to get you on a path. And I have to say, and I don't know, you can sort of speak for your own experience, but I have to say, I have never worked in a data-driven organization, or marketing team. Yeah. But I have talked, my experience my experience is talking to people over the years and at Serious Decisions and Forrester. I certainly did connect with companies that were operating in a data-driven fashion. So it exists. It happens. I've seen it.
That's splendid. Well, people can't see you, but you talk very animatedly, and I have to point out your microphone keeps brushing against your thing again. So it's actually brushing against this bit. So are we back in this situation again where something that's kind of becoming buzzy and people are describing themselves as data-driven marketers, and we're talking about being data-driven as a discipline within marketing? Are we back at one of those things where it is just a capability and skill that marketing just needs and should be implied and shouldn't be a separate thing? Is that what you're saying? It's really hard to do if you do want to be data driven?
I was saying yes. I would say that if marketing wants to be relevant, and I should better say, if a marketing team function wants to be relevant over the long term within an organization, they need to be data driven. So they need to develop the discipline of setting quantitative goals, understanding what insights they need to measure against those goals, putting the data, the skills, the technology, the people together to help them track that. And this is just like a sales team that needs a good sales ops supporting team, and it needs the tools so that they can manage people against quotas. So, and it's not that marketing explicitly has quotas. and in every organization, as we've discussed these various other marketing trends, it's unique. So it's not to say that there's a one size fit all, like quotas, like profitability or whatever, that is easy to become data driven in managing yourself against. In some cases, it might be brand. It's all about brand. In some cases, it's about generating pipeline and demand, and so it has to definitely be situational. But again, I've seen it. I've seen it happen. There was one account that I worked with, and we were doing more of a technology assessment and evaluation. But one of their goals was to build a what they would call an analytics stack that enabled all the people in the various roles of marketing to look at marketing performance information in conjunction with sales teams. So and their big focus was on demand and engagement within accounts. They're more of a services organization, so continued engagement in accounts. So they could look at data with sales, it's sort of at the field marketing level, look at data with sales and understand how are we at terms of our, going after new prospects, engaging with existing accounts, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the interesting things about it, because I know I mentioned the training about that, was that one of the things that was a concern of the average workers was that it's like, well, this is great if we set up this analytics stack, we get these new reports and stuff like that, and I got somebody I can call, but I don't have all day, and I need to know where do I get what information that I need to have my reviews. And so they did once they put the sort of the BI platform together and got the report set, they did a ton of training, and that got the adoption of using the data resources. And
so we're back to tooling again, and adoption of tools from a MarTech perspective.
So you can't avoid tools, right?
No.
Because, in this case, because you need a place to amass the information for tracking performance, and you need to be able to, and whether that's brand or whether it is about demand or engagement, any of the various factors you're trying to manage against, you need a place to put the information and expose that information at the right level of granularity to the people within the organization. And again, it ain't easy to do, but it is doable. And the tools that we have today are much better than the tools we had back 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, maybe we need to split some of these questions out. So it sounds to me like what you're saying in many of these conversations, and maybe we've misnamed this segment completely and have started on the wrong mission about deciding whether things are one-hit wonders or wonderballs, because many of these things have come into vogue as separate things. So people describe themselves as agile marketers or data-driven marketers or growth marketers. But actually, I think in the discussions we've had is they're all facets of being a marketer. Is that your view about, you said it's difficult to be completely data-driven, but is that an aspiration we should have as marketers?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a little bit of it's like a little bit like talking about perfection. It's you may never get there, but the journey to help you get there is what's important. And you're always trying to improve along the way. Yeah. I think, go ahead.
Now, the only thing I was also going to say, I think there's a counter conversation, isn't there, about being data driven, and that we sort of, are we now getting so much data and getting so comfortable with the data and then measuring ourselves on metrics that are easy to measure, like things like web hits and that kind of stuff and those kinds of vanity metrics, that we're actually doing two things. One is we're not taking creative risks anymore because we're not going with gut feel. It's only that's proven to work. And we start doing the automated, lazy, sloppy shit like remarketing and stuff where we see, oh my God, I've got a 0.5% click-through rate. And that's far more interesting than putting up a billboard somewhere that you can't measure whether somebody sees it or doing something creatively interesting. Do you think that there's a concern that people are becoming perhaps too data-driven?
Yes and no. So I'll say the yes in that you can become too fascinated with the vanity metrics, and that the vanity metrics what drives your review engine, if you will. But if you're focused at high level goals for the organization. So, a company that is, we were just talking about an example about a company, comes out of an acquisition, they got to rebrand, they got to establish a new, cadence of generating demand. They got to re-engage customers. Perhaps they have to engage new customers. So those are all really important things that you need to be able to track at how well you're doing that. And those are high level metrics that are not down into the weeds of the individual tactics. And I think they do enable you to have the discussions about, well, we're not tracking well against those goals. So now we need to be creative as to how we think we do that.
Yeah.
And you may not be able to take, that billboard advertisement or advertising that you did that you can't connect specifically to, any particular deal or whatever, but you can see. I mean, brand is one of those things where it's like you can see what your trends are over time and start to make correlations with the data you've got that enable you to say somehow exposures, territories, whatever. I'm seeing an uptick in favorability, preference for us, and so that campaign must have worked, or that campaign didn't work. Nothing seems to be working. Okay, now how do we solve the problem?
Yeah, and also, I know. I think really there was. You were talking about some of the things that are fairly difficult to measure, aren't they? I mean, it depends if you're B2B or B2C about figuring some of that stuff out. You just mentioned there, So do you advocate then that there should be still a level of taking a punt then, or do you think it's all data driven nowadays?
Taking a punt.
Yeah, just doing something that it's like the conversation we had the other day about attribution. There are going to be things that you're going to do that you won't be able to get the attribution for. So presumably you must, in a similar vein, right, is that we as marketers should still be doing things that maybe we can't measure. Or do you think everything's measurable?
I don't. So I don't think everything is measurable. But again, I'm going to distinguish between at the tactic level versus are we as an organization hitting the goals for marketing?
Yeah. Okay. So eventually, you believe that anything that we do as marketers, we will see the impact somewhere, and we just need to measure the right things and not worry too much about whether a vanity metric or something further tactical that we can see.
Yeah, it's like, I think we had, when we were talking about attribution, we were referring back to a conversation you had with our former boss, Grant Johnson, who said, I would go to the executive team. I try to understand, how do you think marketing is going to provide value? Yeah. Now I need to track the things that help us demonstrate that value. Can I always make a direct one-on-one correlation? No. Yeah. But if I don't try, I'll never get there. And I think, with data scientists, this is again the right resources, the right people, the knowledge that can help you solve those. How do I track this? Yeah. But you really got to decide how you're providing value for the organization first. That's where it all starts.
Yeah, and there's a level of investment, isn't there, both in terms of effort, tools, and getting the right skills from an agency perspective in being able to do the correct measurement as well, isn't there? It's quite often that we don't focus too much on that in our marketing budgets or in our time, really. We focus on getting things done. And we get lazy. Oh, the PR agency can give us, this is all they can give us. So that's all we're measuring. So Yeah, that's good. I like that. So it's a tricky one. Where does this put data-driven marketing? Does it put it as a one-hit wonder, or it doesn't sound like that, is it a wonder wall?
I would say it is it's a wonder wall. It's certainly not a one-hit wonder. I would say it's a wonder wall that is yet to really catch on.
Wow. That's fantastic. So I don't know what that would be, but it sounds like we're going to be listening to Wonderwall again this week. So that's fantastic. And that's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time again this week, Jeff. I don't think, we've got a list of different topics to discuss. So we'll be returning next week. Should we give a tease of what it is we might discuss next week?
Well, I think we should say listeners should. I know we had one set of suggestions that came in, which we could dig into, like how's the gig economy treating marketing, and how does AI affect? Because we talk about AI, but let's get into how it affects particular roles. Yeah, those could be great topics.
I also. There was a great Twitter spat this week with Mark Ritson and somebody else. I can't remember who it was. About marketing education, whether marketers need an education or not. I think is a good discussion. I don't know whether we'd decide whether that was Wonderwall or One Hit Wonder, but certainly that would be a great discussion to have with you too.
I think that would be a great discussion, and I don't think it fits into either.
No, maybe a listener might let us know where they want us to go next. But I hope I will see you again next week.
Yes.
Excellent. I'll see you then, and have a great week.
Take care and have a good weekend.
Cheers, Jeff.
Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. By now you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Backbeat, the word is on the street that the fire in your...
Thanks, Jeff. Data-driven marketing. Is there any other kind? And an essential skill to have on any marketing team, and it's definitely a Wonderwall. On to our guest, Christoph. Trappe is a content marketer, author, and speaker who helps companies share their unique stories to reach prospects and retain existing customers. Christoph has worked in B2B and B2C journalism and even launched a new successful news site with Eastern Iowa News in 2009. During his career, he has run content marketing campaigns in a variety of verticals and with a mix of businesses, including startups and established companies. He has led teams of journalists, content creators, strategists, and designers to successfully drive results. Now he's considered a global top 14 content marketer, top 40 B2B marketer, top 100 CX thought leader, top 5% podcaster, and top 24 digital marketer. His blog, www.authenticstorytelling.net, has been listed as a valuable resource in the marketing industry. And today, he's on Rockstar CMO FM. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hi, Christoph. Welcome to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you, sir?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me.
No, you're very welcome. So not everybody knows you, listens to the show. Well, I mean, a lot of people know you. You're quite popular around the social media, at least that's what I see anyway. So what is it that you do, Christoph?
Yeah, so I'm a content strategist, content marketing executive. How do we tell better stories? How do we stay in front of people, get in front of people? Currently, my day job, I do content strategy for VoxPopMe. It's a video survey platform for brands. But of course, I also got authenticstorytelling.net, do a couple podcasts, do live streams, write books. Try to help people create better content and stay more relevant for their audiences.
Yeah, that's splendid. I mean, as a content guy, you're very welcome here. I don't know. Yeah, I can't presume that you've listened to the show, but we have Robert Rose on the show every week, and he's like my content marketing guru. Love his stuff. So you're a content guy. So tell us a bit about your journey into content marketing. What lured you in? Because I know that Robert lured me in with his book and some of those works. What got you into content marketing?
Yeah, always good to hear about Robert. Robert, I've known him for a few years. Great guy and thought leader out there for sure. I grew up in the journalism world, and went to school to be a sports writer. Never worked a day in my life as a sports writer, but worked as a news journalist and investigative reporting, public safety. And then, at some point made the move over to corporate communications, corporate marketing. Yeah. And that's kind of what happened. And then at some point we started calling it content marketing. And I tell you what, good content marketing is kind of like journalism. Yeah. I mean, it really is, because you tell stories that matter. And that's kind of how it happened. And the mediums have evolved over the years, used to be writing only. Now we do podcasts and live streams and whatnot. So it's interesting to see how things evolve. And I think that's what I'm motivated by. That's what I'm trying to do. What's the medium we need to use? How do we tell the story? How do we get in front of people? And I think any marketer that doesn't do that, I mean, At some point, you're going to fail.
Yeah, and looking through your LinkedIn profile, I mean, you're pure. I mean, from being a journalist through content marketing, you're not somebody who's just jumped on the content marketing bandwagon recently. So it's something that's clearly a passion for you in your marketing career.
I mean, of course, I've always been a journalistic storyteller. I even got that in my profile there. And I think content marketing kind of gives you that opportunity, Yes, you partner with product marketing. Yes, you partner with others. But at the end of the day, you got to tell those stories that help people find you, that help people connect with you, that help people see the value in what you do.
And what do you think is the most important thing when you're advising a client and they're thinking about content marketing? And, I keep, a lot of people think that content marketing is the thing that you do. So we're going to produce a video and that's our content marketing strategy. How do you approach content marketing with your clients and get them on board with this as a strategy rather than just a tactic?
Well, first of all, you have to integrate it. And this is one reason why I love live streaming so much right now. Everything has to kind of feed together. So I'll give you an example. Years ago, we would go interview experts and then we would write articles for them.
Yeah.
When people say, oh, my CEO, he didn't get his article done. And I'm like, why is your CEO writing an article? Have somebody else write the article.
Yeah.
And same thing now. So what I love about you have to integrate it. So I'll give you an example. I do a live stream. Then I turn that into a podcast.
Yeah.
Then I turn that into an article. Yeah. Then I might turn that into a chapter of my next book. Yeah. Then I might make a talk out of it. So my point is, don't just create a blog post. Don't just create an ad campaign. Figure out a way to tie it all together. Sometimes you can do it 100% of the way. Sometimes it's 60, sometimes 80.
Right.
So don't feel like you always have to do it, but throw your content a parade. I mean, that's how you get return on effort for sure.
Yeah. I think Ted Rubin, he tweeted, another guy we talked to a lot on Rockstar CMO. He said, ride your content until the wheels fall off is the expression I think he used on Twitter. Like just get all the juice you can out of your content. So I really like that. And the fact that it's a whole lot less effort, isn't it? It's like these people that are producing these random acts of content, these one-off things, then they're then starting again and creating another one-off thing. And you can get so much more bang for your content marketing buck, can't you?
Yeah. And see, you have to use your content everywhere you can. And the other thing too, is you got to remember there's so many different use cases of what content you need. For example, sometimes the sales team needs different kind of content than a blog reader, right?
Yeah.
So you have to find different sound bites. You have to use different pieces and you have to think about all those things. So it's easier in theory, but there's still a lot of balls in the air. And this is why you need to make the process easier. And I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I think content creators need to create in the CMS. If you're writing articles in a Word document or Google Doc, it is not the way to go anymore.
Wow.
And here's the reason why. I hate Google Docs now. I mean, and here's the reason why. If I write on the website CMS, you know what it tells me, Yoast? It tells me, am I on the right track? For SEO, for readability. I don't get that in Google Docs. In Google Docs, I don't get anything. And then people edit in there, then you have to copy and paste. You know what happens when you copy and paste? That's when mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so you don't want to have those workflows. You want to make sure those things are easy. And you really can, have people focus on the right things.
Oh my God. That is just amen. Because not only am I a content marketing person or considered a content marketing person, CMS is actually my bread and butter and what I've spent a lot of my career with. Unlike yourself, who's been a pure content marketer all the way through. I come from the content management vendor background, and trying to get users to use the CMS in that way is really hard. I mean, most people, when they're creating content, will create it in Word or something like that, then pass it around emails. And then it finally, at some point later, somebody uploads it into the CMS and God knows what's happened to it. So I love that too. Well, and sort of onto your process as a writer is you've written books, and I love talking to people who've written books. So I haven't done one yet, and you're on your fourth. Tell us about that. Your experience as an author. How did you convert this to become an author?
Well, so I was never going to write one. In fact, it was Joe Polizzi who said to me, "You got to write a book, man." And I said, "Why? People can just read my blog," and it's true, they can, but it's a different audience, right? So all my books have been blog to book strategy, and what that means, it's not just a collection of blog posts, but it is the base are blog posts. I've written about it. So here we are in almost March, and in January I decided I need to finish my book on going live. So here's the thing. All these brands are talking about doing podcasts.
Yeah.
And you know what happens? They do a podcast and they got like 20 downloads. And then they go, "Oh, that's it?" Horrible. Mm-hmm. And so it's not horrible when you first start, but it feels horrible. And so I figured out if you live stream your podcast to all these channels that you build all this time building over the last few years, you can increase your return on effort.
Yeah.
And so I went to my blog and I looked, how much content do I have? And I had about 27,000 words in the last year of content related to the topic.
Yeah.
So I put all that together, put it in a chapter format, rewrote. I'm still editing it. I got a foreword from Switcher Studio. I got a couple contributions from Max Brandstetter and Jeff Kozlowski. Yeah. And, so, and now I'm publishing it and it's available for pre-order. Same with the other ones. But my point is, not everybody will read your blog. Some people like reading books. Some people like holding books, So that's
you can see behind me. I like owning marketing books, and I listen to I'm always talking about the marketing book podcast with Douglas Burdett. I strongly recommend that to everybody. I'm always tweeting about it, and I'm always buying marketing books on the recommendation of that particular podcast. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's people that I discover through books I don't discover through their blogs or whatever. You get turned on to it, don't you? And I also like that concept. Somebody was talking about this the other day that I was listening to, and they were talking about your body of work, that if you take it more of a considered approach to your blogging, you can write a book. And if you think of it as your body of work and what you're going to create, I think that's fascinating. I love that approach. And back to your books, you're on to your fourth, and the latest is Going Live stream your podcast to reach more people. Seems really relevant right now, especially as there's so much emphasis on audio, with all the buzz about Clubhouse, and maybe you've got a comment about that too. So two things here. What it was, you've touched on it actually a little bit about what drove you to going live. Why do you think that's important, so important for people right now? And what's your book about?
So, I mean, the book is about how do you do it? Why do you do it? How do you, make it as easy as possible? But I never planned on doing it. I was on Jason Fall's podcast, about a little over a year ago. And he had his iPad out and he says, "Oh, I'm going live on Switcher and look how I do it. I mean, all this stuff." And I was like, "Well, what?" And so, I started using SwitcherStudio.com, and basically I tried it. Yeah. And, and you can go live to all these channels at once. You can go on LinkedIn, you can go on Amazon, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube. Yeah. And so I started doing it. And of course it kept evolving, right? So now I got this nice setup. I got a 4K camera, a ring light, a microphone. I used to just do it on my iPad. Yeah. And that's how it started. I had no intention of doing it. And then slowly but surely, everybody was asking about podcasting. How do you launch one? How do you do it? And I'm like, maybe you shouldn't launch one. Maybe what you should do is do live to podcast to whatever else. And so that's kind of how it evolved. And that's what Jason does. Most of his live shows or podcasts. Wow. That's what others do. But that's been kind of my strategy. And
well, if it's good enough for Jason Falls, I think that sounds pretty good. What's and what's the different discipline? Obviously, this is like the 51st episode of this particular podcast, so I've kind of, I'm figuring it out a little bit. What's the difference between the discipline of going live? What would you recommend to me from going live to doing it as a podcast?
So I think the biggest difference is that when you do a podcast only that is not live, you can edit.
Yep.
And you can't edit
when you're Saturday live. Morning.
So you can't edit when you're live. Yeah. Now you can still edit out things that you said on the live on the podcast version. But sometimes it seems kind of overkill, because if it's already live and hundreds of people saw it or thousands of people saw it, why do you need to edit it out? So, but I do edit some things out. Like if we're just chit-chatting about something totally unrelated, I do sometimes edit that out depending what's going on.
Most listeners to this will know that I never edit out any of the chit chat. So that's some of the feedback I've had, a little bit too much chit chat. But so I don't fiddle with the interviews. So I might as well have just published it live, because I never edit the interviews. It's just the way that I cut things together, add the music and all that kind of good stuff. That's what I do with in the edit on a Saturday morning. But yeah.
But you can do that now on the live. So Switcher just rolled out sound effects, So for example, you can do applause, or you can do whatever. And so you can do the music, or if you have segments, right? Yeah. You can, like, when the new segment starts, before you started, you just have it fly in something and do the music. So it's possible. I will say this, if you're the host and the producer, it's a lot of work, because you're talking, you're listening, and you're also pushing the buttons, and you can get quite comfy.
Yeah, I played with one of those platforms last year, but I don't think it was Switcher. I was trying to remember what it was called, but exact same thing. And then as the host, you're trying to swap things in, trying to make sure the right thing's in focus and stuff. So you do need some help with something like that, don't you?
You do, and it is kind of stressful when I do it. So I try to keep it as simple as possible. But like for the real talk with Vox Pop Me, I produce it and they just talk, so they don't have to worry about it. But it's possible. Just don't overdo it,
Yeah. I think that's the problem, isn't it? You get these new toys and then you start overdoing it. I know that's what I'm like. So that's your book. Anything else you want to say? So what is it? Step by? Sorry, I guess I should have read it, but I don't think it's out yet. Is it? Isn't it coming out?
It's coming out pretty soon here, March 10th at the latest. You can pre-order it. It'll
I'll include a link to it in the show notes, and be sure to read it myself. And maybe then ask you some questions once I know more about the topic. So that's coming out March 10th. I'll include a link to it in the show notes. Also, I touched a little bit there on Clubhouse. You a big Clubhouse fan, or not so much?
Well, I kind of laugh at Clubhouse a little bit, because everybody's saying that's like the latest thing. And I said, that's not the latest thing at all. We did that in the 80s. Yeah. It was party lines, Yeah. So I think there is value in it. It's okay to try. Right now, I'm not prioritizing it, because I'm prioritizing Amazon Live, especially, some of those channels. There might be a way to use it. I know some people use it, but, now we're seeing there was somebody who was just kicked off the platform because he or she was live. He was recording, So
you can't capture it.
Yeah. Just a reminder. Yeah. If it's online, it's never private, even if you think it is. So I'm not prioritizing it currently. I know Mitch Jackson, for example, was on my podcast, the Business Storytelling Podcast, saying you should try it, because you can connect with people differently. I agree, you can. But right now, I'm not necessarily making it.
I'm in the trying phase. I'm trying to listen in. It feels to me like I'm at a conference that I've got no time to go to the sessions of, I mean, like, you've got to take the time to listen to the right sessions, because they're not going to be there. Anyway, I just realized the time. Thank you very much, Christoph, for giving it. I've got one more question for you. We have a regular feature on Rockstar CMO called the Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool, our portal to hell for all the BS, snake oil, and whatever overhyped trends that plague the industry we love. What would you throw in our Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool?
Well, there's plenty of trends, but the thing I think that we really need to throw in the pool is this constant pressure of content. Is content working today? Is it working right now? And here's the thing. Content, when you do it well, still takes some time. I mean, you can ask Robert about that. Yeah. But we have is it working today? Is it working? Nothing is working today. Yeah. The end. Yeah. It takes time. So let's stop the unnecessary pressure. Let's stop all those different things. Just something to keep in mind, push forward, move forward. Hey, I had a CEO say to me, "Oh, we don't want to do any content. We just need leads." I'm like, nobody even knows you. He goes, "Well, I don't care. I just need the leads." Yeah. And I'm like, you get the leads by building a brand and getting in front of people. Yeah. So seriously, stop it. It's not an overnight process. Build your brand, push forward, be relevant for the people you're trying to reach.
That's perfect. And thank you very much, Christoph. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And if people are looking out for you when they spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
Yeah, of course, always authenticstorytelling.net. The book is available there, and of course on Amazon as well. And Trappe on Twitter is always a good place to connect.
Yeah, I've seen you there. I've followed you for a long time. Thank you very much, Christoph. I hope to speak to you again soon.
You got it.
Thank you, Christoph. I followed him on Twitter for some time. He shares a lot of great stuff around content marketing, and I will include all his links, including to his new book, in the show notes. As I mentioned, we're still in lockdown here at the Rockstar CMO penthouse in London, so it's that time of the week to get transported away with a cocktail and join my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend, and I hope you're staying warm here in the throes of winter. We have had a very weird winter here in the U.S. Where parts of I don't know how much you've been keeping up with parts of Texas being your
hometown,
major disaster areas because they got a little snow. But they don't normally get it, so it's a very, very strange thing. But anyway, the funny thing is that this week what we're drinking has nothing to do with sort of the news of the day, but it's just something I've quite literally not been able to get a song out of my head all day. And so I named the drink after it, which is just an old-fashioned love song. For whatever reason, I have been singing that song nonstop today, and so it's an old-fashioned, right? It's an old-fashioned with a couple of goofy blueberries to represent, a nice couple. And it kicks us off to a weekend in 3-part harmony, right? So.
Nice.
There you go. And so it, as an old fashioned, of course, it's just bourbon and some bitters, your classic old fashioned.
Yeah. If I hadn't decided 50 weeks ago or 40 something weeks ago that gin and tonic was going to be the drink of choice here, it would be an old fashioned. I have bought bourbon, bitters, and and it's me and my wife's go to. When. Well, for us anyway, if we're staying in a nice hotel or something like that, and we're free of the kids, and we've had dinner, and it's our cocktail, sit there, just us two. We have an old fashioned. I love an old fashioned.
Yeah, that's how I judge a great bar is the quality of their.
Oh yeah. Although sometimes they spend so much time making the fucking thing.
There's that too, right? Where it's like that scene. Do you remember the scene in Love Actually where he's like, he's packaging up the bracelet and he's like, just one more flourish.
Yeah, and I think bars I think they do it on purpose because they know they're being judged on how well they make an old fashioned, and the lighter comes out to light the orange peel and the bits, and the muddling goes on for about an hour and a half. Like,
that's right.
Please,
yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing the amount of craft that can go into a simple old fashioned.
Yeah. Just give me half a lager for while you're doing that.
Exactly. Well, so I will tell you, I have done that before.
Yeah,
I have done that before because especially in a bar that I know they take a long time, I will say, give me a beer to start with, and then go make me a special old fashioned, right?
Yeah.
And by the time the old fashioned comes, you're especially after a long day where you want to just pound back that first beer. It can be a perfect way to time things. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was, we'll just have a
I drink too
conversation.
much? Is that sounds like...
Well, I've got a similar story. I used, when I was first traveling as a consultant at the beginning of time, I was with my more experienced colleague, and we had a client in Hamburg, and we used to go there a lot. And the lady behind the bar of the hotel that we stayed in all the time realised that we were impatient for her pouring her Dunkel beer, the big dark beers that they do, and so she would always like do 2 little beers for us when we came in the bar and give them to us, so that she had time to pour the big one.
Nice.
So we sit there like... Anyway, so you were making an old-fashioned.
That's right.
I shall obviously look at the ingredients on my bar and try to rustle up a similar thing. Did you put any ice in your old-fashioned?
Yes, of course. 1 big rock, if you've got it. Yeah.
I had two smaller ones stuck together. Does that count?
Yeah, fine. What? At this point, my friend, it's whatever you got.
Yeah, you've seen this show before.
Yeah,
let me see. I
have indeed.
I've got a Bombay Sapphire. Let me just slurp a little bit of that in there.
Good.
Ooh, nice. Slightly like, ooh. I'm actually doing it this time, Robert, because it's Friday evening here.
Yeah, there you go.
So let me see what, and you sort of muddled in some bitters, didn't you?
Well, of course. Yes.
Well, I think I'll stick some tonic in then.
Perfect.
Ooh, there's some nice long gin and tonic. I mean, old-fashioned. Let me give that a try. I did mention Bombay Sapphire, didn't I? As we look for alternative sponsors for the show. Oh, that's delicious. I do love an old-fashioned. I could drink these every week, Robert. How do you do it?
It's consistency, my friend. It's all about consistency.
It is. Yeah, and they're consistently good.
Yes.
And where, I've drank old-fashioned in various locations. Where would you prefer to drink these? Where are you going to transport us to from lockdown?
I think we're going to head up north today. From where I live, not from where you live. And because good Lord, we don't need more of that. So, one of the places that I have had one of the best old fashions is in San Francisco. And there are some great hotels. And of course, the Drake being one of the better ones in San Francisco. Classic, iconic hotel. Yeah. And the bar there is really just fabulous. And so I think we're there. It's a good choice. In San Francisco, enjoying a wonderful old fashioned in the hotel lobby.
Yeah, I believe. I think I never. Obviously, haven't stayed there. I've been in there and had a drink, and what a wonderful choice. I love that. So we, aside from commenting about the weather, because that's a very British thing to do, but it's very mild here, by the way. We had a sunny day. I guess the conversation would turn to marketing eventually. What would we be discussing this week?
Well, it's interesting because the thing that I have had on my mind is Zoom meetings. And,
on your mind.
I'll let your imagination, run wild as to why I'm thinking about Zoom meetings these days. But the interesting thing is, so it reminds me of an old joke that I heard many, many moons ago when I was working in a comedy club, actually, which is, have you ever lost your keys? You've lost your keys before, I suspect. And so when you lost your keys, you walk around telling yourself, well, they can't be here. And then you look there anyway. And then you tell yourself, well, they should be here. And then you've looked there 4 times and they're not there. And at some point, you sort of throw up your arms and you say to nobody in particular, I know they're going to be in the last place I look. And of course, the answer to that is, well, duh. Yeah, they're going to be in the last place you look, because why would you keep looking for them once you found them?
Absolutely.
And so but I was reminded of that joke because I was talking with a colleague about creative brainstorming and how it's sort of evolved on Zoom. And he was struggling, this director of marketing, with they were having these creative brainstorming meetings. And since they'd moved to this virtual format, they said, it's been really hard to generate creative ideas because of the Zoom virtual setting. And so they were thinking of making these meetings, and did actually make these meetings shorter and made more of them to sort of maybe make up for the Zoom fatigue. That is a real thing for sure.
Oh, well, God, yes. Yeah.
And so, but interestingly and ironically, actually, and that's when I told them the story of the keys, by the way. I said, their creative, ideas are not keys, right? You need to keep continuing to look for them even after you found one.
Yeah.
And so I did a little research after our conversation to see, if that guess about moving them to shorter, more frequent time periods would be the right move. And as it turns out, it's not. And in fact, there's research to back this up, where there's this thing that they call the creative cliff, which is we humans, we wrongly believe that our creativity declines during a meeting as in sort of correlation with our mental energy. And it's why in many long creative sessions or meetings, why we often settle for our whatever idea we come up for first. In other words, we stop looking for keys when we've got this new idea, because finally we got something, we're done, right? We go, oh, I've got a creative idea and we're done.
Yeah.
And what the research actually says is, no, you actually, the creativity tends to stay the same or even improve. However, two things have to be true. One is the meeting participants need to be aware of this. In other words, you need to teach them and make them aware that creativity is going to stay the same or even improve as you maybe get into mental fatigue. And two, you need to be of a mindset to create as many ideas as you possibly can in that setting. And so we sort of came to this conclusion of, it wasn't about creating more Zoom sessions that were shorter. It was actually about delaying them and making them much longer. In other words, doubling the length and having much fewer of them. And he did that. And interestingly, he reported back to me that it's much, much better. They're having much more success with this because they're actually having much more creativity by, in other words, not doing them every week, doing them once a month, but then doubling the length of them so that they're really long sessions, and they're getting a ton more value out of it. So it was just a really insightful way to look at creative brainstorming.
That's interesting because we're doing meetings differently, aren't we? Because they're on Zoom. There's no sort of, you can't make coffee, have comfort breaks. They're quite intensely meeting-y, aren't they? So is it that because he's lengthened it, the sort of pressure of the meeting is released, and does he let do people, are they able to leave the Zoom, come back in? If you were in a conference room for 2 hours, you'd pop out for the restroom or grab a coffee or something, wouldn't you? Do you think, is it something around that?
I think it's both, right? I mean, I think it's one, because the other thing that they did, of course, was that they informed the team that this was the case, right? They sort of said, this is why we're doubling the length and having the frequency. And so I think it's both the expectations and preparation that you do for a 30-minute Zoom meeting versus a 3-hour Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
And two, I think it's also because you restructure naturally, and they did it purposely. When you have a 3-hour Zoom meeting, you do restructure it so that, people can get up and walk away from their screen and go to the restroom, and they can go get a coffee, and they can do some of the things. When you're 30 minutes together on Zoom, you're like, okay, we only got 30 minutes together. Let's focus, right? And it's intense, and you're looking at the screen, and you're not multitasking. But when you've got 3 hours, maybe in a creative brainstorming, you're not multitasking, but it's okay to take 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, or go get a cup of coffee or whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Plus that, in the context of your day, and I know from talking to you just before you popped on, is that the intensity, it's not just that 30 minutes, is it? It's the 30 minutes that's before, it was the 30 minutes before that, it was the fact that...
Well, indeed. Yeah, that's
you arrive at 4 o'clock and you... Yeah.
Right? That's the fatigue. It's the back-to-back of, constantly pivoting topics and subjects and people and being on camera and doing that, that's the hard part. You know, sitting on a Zoom meeting with your friend for 30 minutes is child's play. But sitting on 30 minutes with your friend after you've spent the last 6.5 hours in Zoom meetings becomes, interminable.
Yeah. And that's really, I think that's really interesting, the thing you're saying there about the pivot, because you are going from one meeting to another there isn't even a walk down the corridor to think about the next meeting. It is instantly hang up, sign in. Your mind has to move from the previous task to the new task without any kind of reflection.
That's right. And it does allow, because it's a longer meeting, it allows those that are coming off of something like that to ease their way into it as well, right? Because it's going to be 3 hours. They don't have to be immediately on and prepped and ready to go for the first 20 minutes. That's like, hey guys, I just got, start the meeting. And then the first thing somebody says is, hey guys, I just got off of 2 back-to-backs. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and I'll be back. Right. Exactly. Quiet for 20 minutes just so I can reset. And that is, to me, that's a really refreshing thing as well.
Yeah, we're trying some different stuff, like booking 45-minute meetings.
Yep, that's a key thing, is to book those 45 or basically just after the hour or whatever, to give people a chance to have a break. Yeah, we're just noticing exactly the same thing about the Zoom fatigue and having to switch and trying to make those changes. So I think and also like the other sorry, I'm babbling. I was on a Zoom call last night, and we're launching a new website. Been a very intense week. Zoom calls. And then the Zoom call opened, and it was with some executives. And the Zoom call started very slowly, everybody chatting, introducing themselves. And my mind was running at 1,000,000 miles an hour because I had these deadlines to go. And I found it really hard that, why are they taking so long? But of course, once I took a breath and eased into the meeting, it was, we're forgetting all that stuff. We're just hustling, and we've got to spend the first 10 minutes just chatting about the weather or whatever it is, right?
To make things better. But that sounds like so. The thought for this week that we're going to, as we sip these wonderful drinks, is about how we get creative over Zoom, and let's hope that soon we don't have to worry about that. But that's a very good thought. Thank you very much, Robert. And is this something you've written about on your wonderful blog before?
It is. I will tell you, the interesting thing is that I have been a little remiss over updating my blog over the last couple of months, or not months, but a couple of weeks, as we have been busy with client work. So that is not an excuse. It is simply an explanation. But yes, we have talked about certainly the creative brainstorming and that sort of thing before on our wonderful website, which of course is contentadvisory.net.
And also this week, weren't you involved in an event? Is it something that people can re-see or go to, or what were you up to this week?
Oh, this week? Well, I did speak at an event called Digital Summit. Which was it's an event that is now virtual. It is usually all over the world. Actually, they have digital summits in London and here in the US and all over the place, actually. This year was again, because of the obvious, was fully virtual, and so I was one of the sessions there, and I'll be quite honest with you, I don't know that they're making the archive available or not. I suspect they are for those who pay for the conference, but Well, I'll put it to you this way. If you just were to look at any of my other content, you would get the gist of what I spoke about.
Well, I it suddenly popped into my head and then realized I hadn't done any of the research, because I was listening to your podcast this morning and you were talking about doing the event, so I should have done a bit more research. And when if people do want to know where you're going to be presenting next, I guess is the right way to segue into this, and they spin the dial on the interwebs, where will they find you?
Well, unfortunately, I tend to be the worst self-promoter of all time, but were I to actually promote myself and where I'm speaking next, I would do so on my social channels, which are of course on LinkedIn and Twitter, Robert_Rose on Twitter, and then LinkedIn, however they do their URLs. I am well, actually, Rob Rose there on LinkedIn, which is its own story. But yeah, there you go.
Oh, well, that's for another week. And talking of other weeks, will I see you in the bar next week, sir?
You will indeed, my friend.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert. Some useful tips there if you feel all zoomed out. The event he spoke at this week was Digital Summit at Home, and he and Joe Polizzi will be live on Clubhouse this Wednesday at noon Eastern, and I will include all these links in the show notes. So that's a wrap on episode 51 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks again to Jeff, Christoph and Robert. Please check out their links in the show notes. Click them, follow them, take a look at their work and share it. I really appreciate their time. You can find the show notes on your favourite podcasting platform or our brand new website for this podcast, rockstarcmo.fm, where you can also find all our previous episodes. So, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? Well, we've cracked into the top 25% of podcasts by downloads and starting to make it onto some of those marketing charts. So it'd be great if you could help. Please leave a review, subscribe, share, get in touch, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff and I will pick a new topic and decide if it's a one-hit wonder or Wonderwall. Robert Rose will be back in our Rockstar CMO virtual bar, and I'll be catching up with Ian Lowe, who returns to tell us about his new CMO gig at Essential Accessibility. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and I hope you'll again join us next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.